What do you look for in a great centre-back? It might be speed, it might be strength, it might be the ability to look at the other team before the game in the tunnel, but the main thing is probably height. Height is a big thing with centre-backs, as we can see with Virgil van Dijk, Ruben Diaz, William Saliba, Bastoni. They're all over about 6'2". But what about those players who slip through the tough scouting process and prove their defensive ability despite being small? Let's take a look at the art and beauty of the small centre-back. Who should we start with? Maybe none other better than Carles Puyol, one of my all-time favourite centre-backs, and he was known for being on the smaller side. If you do a quick Wikipedia search, it says he's about 5'10". People say he's smaller, people say he's a bit bigger, and I know it's cliche, but he really did play like he was 7 foot tall. In my opinion, the best Spanish centre-back we've ever seen, and that's obviously in a star-studded cast with Sergio Ramos, Gerard Piqué, Fernando Hierro, and so many more. What is the code word for a small player who's playing in a defensive position in football? It's a pit bull, isn't it? And that is maybe a bit lazy for people to use, but I do think it's probably a bit accurate when it's talking about Carles Puyol. He was so aggressive on the pitch, and this was one of his best strengths. He also had an incredible leap. He had attitude, which I just think is missing a lot from centre-backs nowadays, because in the El Clasico there was hatred towards those teams during the 2010s, and Puyol was one of the main parts of that. He was banging all the fights, and it was him, Sergio Ramos, Pepe, which was adding to the fire in those games. He was also fairly quick. I don't think he was known for his speed, but he definitely was not getting left behind. But I think we can all agree his leadership was the main reason Carles Puyol made his name as one of the best centre-backs in the world, not just one of the short best centre-backs. His prime years definitely came with Gerard Piqué, and it's funny because Gerard Piqué is about 6'4", Carles Puyol is 6 inches below him, and it felt like the other way around. Carles Puyol seemed like he towered over Piqué. I always thought Piqué's defensive abilities left something to be desired, but he still was a top player. But I think he learned his craft so well because he was next to Puyol. It seemed like a big brother, little brother relationship between the two of them. You could argue Puyol was fantastic for that Pep Guardiola side because they weren't doing many corners into the box, they weren't doing many crosses, and if they did, as we saw so many times, if they needed a goal in the last minute, they'd stick Piqué up there. But Puyol, it wasn't a team like an Arsenal today, for example, where they rely on the set pieces. But maybe you could argue Puyol in a different team wouldn't have done so well, because obviously in the dominant Spanish sides, they were also playing pretty much a carbon copy of what he played at Barcelona. But you just can't deny his passion for the game. One of the best things I've ever seen was when Gerard Piqué got hit with a lighter during the game, and as a lot of these players do, they started to go down, start to try and get, I don't know, a fan sent off, but Puyol just grabbed him up and just told him to crack on with the game. I mean, once wasn't he even playing tennis after he retired and ran into a glass wall and he had blood scraped down all of his leg? And let's not forget maybe the most iconic part of his career, the semi-final header that won the game against Germany in 2010. Those headers that are just pure raw will are my favourite type of headers. It wasn't a brilliant technical header, he just wanted it more than anyone else on the pitch, and I think that sums up Puyol's career. But if you're going to say Puyol might be the best short centre-back of all time, can you say the second best is Fabio Cannavaro? It seems a common theme that these centre-backs were initially full-backs and then got moved into playing as a centre-back, because Puyol played right-back for his early days in Barcelona, and Cannavaro, I believe, played right-back and left-back for, pretty much throughout his career. I think he did a few jobs at Real Madrid and Juventus in the fullback position. But I always think that shows the defensive ability, because obviously the main issue with a fullback that they need to change would be the pace. And if you're not quick enough to play in a fullback position, realistically, if you're good enough at defending, you're going to get put in a centre-half like Cannavaro and Puyol did, or you're just going to get dropped. And I think that's such a testament to these players that they were quite small, yet they still held their own and were even at the top of the game during the career. Cannavaro was a tiny bit before my time. I was young when he was on the way out, but I remember the 2006 World Cup win when he won the Ballon d'Or subsequently after that. And again, the only things I can remember is that he had a great leap, he could read the game really well, his leadership was brilliant, and he was fairly athletic, which seems to be the common theme, doesn't it? I think you can take a 6'5" really athletic centre-back and they'll get on with the natural ability. Of course, with these smaller centre-backs, because, just speaking in England, when you're younger, there's not many small centre-backs when you're playing in the local Sunday League, or even when you get to a decent college level, or if you're lucky enough you can get to the academy level, because especially when you're younger, the game is predicated on athleticism. So if you are a really quick, tall, strong player and you're just gifted with this natural ability, then you can play centre-back, because at the end of the day, no one's going to run past you and no one's going to beat you in the air. But what I do find quite interesting when researching this video, 3 centre-backs have won the Ballon d'Or, and you can say that 2 of them might have been a bit of a defensive midfielder, and the 3 are Fabio Cannavaro, Franz Beckenbauer and Matthias Sammer. Like I say, you can say Sammer and Beckenbauer might have been defensive mids at one point in their career, but what's funny enough, they're all under 6 foot. And like I say, as we see the defensive position as a very tall, athletic, built centre-backs game, then you go into these defenders who are all on the quote-unquote shorter side. It's quite interesting to see that they are the only 3 who have won the Best Player in the World award. And that leads me on to why I think there's such an art and there's such a beauty of these smaller centre-backs who have reached the top of world football. Not to link it with another hype video that I've recently done, but I've said small strikers are on the way out. And I think that is probably the way with smaller centre-backs. I think they were a bit more rare, but it seems like the height of the strikers and the centre-backs are both rising at the moment. And in terms of the centre-backs, I think that's partly because smaller centre-backs had to improve their technical skill. They had to be able to read the game brilliantly, because if they couldn't, they were not going to get a game. Whereas with taller centre-backs and more athletic centre-backs, they could get along with the natural ability, and therefore they didn't have to do that. But as the game increases and skills increase, and when the natural ability of the average player just goes up and up, which it is at the moment, these taller, quicker centre-backs also have to be brilliant with their feet. I think strikers and centre-backs mirror each other. And I don't think it's a coincidence that 10-15 years ago in the Premier League, you had centre-backs like John Terry, Sami Hyypiä, Sol Campbell, Rio Ferdinand, and they were mirroring these really big strikers who were brilliant in the air, a Didier Drogba, a Ruud van Nistelrooy, and Emmanuel Adebayor. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that Spain had a lot of these smaller centre-backs in their possession with Fabio Cannavaro, Puyol, because as I think we can all agree, especially back then, the Spanish game was a lot more technical than the English game, and therefore you didn't need physical ability like you did in the English game, because the ball's played on the deck a lot of the time, and it's predominantly a tiki-taka league, unfortunately, as Ibrahimovic found out. Obviously, the best of the best, Cannavaro, Puyol, could play it against anyone, and I think one of the main things were their leap. Their leap was fantastic, because at the end of the day, what is a small centre-back's deficiency? It's their height, as we can all guess, and if you can leap above a Drogba, a Lewandowski, a Benzema, a Ronaldo in the air, then your deficiencies become a lot smaller, because teams then can't expose your weaknesses. And if you can't jump high enough, then naturally you're going to get put in defensive midfield, in fullback if you're quick enough, or you're going to get left behind. The headline player nowadays is Lisandro Martinez. He is the poster boy for small centre-backs. There was so much laughter when he joined Man United. I actually thought he was coming as a defensive midfielder before he came, because like I say, I didn't think someone who's 5'9" would be a starting centre-back for a top team in England. And people like Jamie Carragher was very outspoken, saying he just doesn't think he's going to acclimatise well to the league. And you could probably say he's proved everyone wrong. Has he had the best career possible at Man United? No, he definitely hasn't. His first season was very good, to be fair to him, and I think he's probably broken the door for smaller centre-backs to go into the league now, because it's probably not as daunting from when he was going to do it. Yes, he's still been exposed, you know, at the Etihad when Man City won 6-3 and Erling Haaland, he just couldn't mark him at all. He was completely out of his depth, and Haaland just made him look like a child. I think you can see that Haaland does struggle against Saliba, he struggles against Virgil van Dijk. He doesn't struggle against these smaller players that he can bully, and like I say, teams can see that and they'll expose it. But you have to admire the sheer aggression and the sheer will to be one of those players, because let's face it, Virgil van Dijk is one of the most calmest players you could possibly see. Lisandro Martinez can't get away with that. If Martinez acts like Van Dijk does and kind of struts around the pitch and acts really cool, he's going to get taken off by, well, Amorim now, but it would have been Ten Hag before. He wouldn't have played any games. And like I say, at the end of the day, centre-backs are getting taller, they're getting quicker, and they're getting more athletic, which I think is a good thing, because like I say, they mirror strikers, and I think strikers are just going to get quicker, taller, and more athletic and more skilled, and it's just going to rise and rise and rise. So shorter centre-backs are naturally becoming more and more obsolete in today's game. but that's not to say they still don't exist. And I think the echoes of Carles Puyol, Fabio Cannavaro, Franz Beckenbauer still run through today's game. And like I say, you can give it all you want about these 6'3" centre-backs. The only people who've won the Ballon d'Or are those lads under 6 foot. So when you're at the bar and you get told 5'11" just is not tall enough, you show them Franz Beckenbauer, Matteo Sammer and Fabio Cannavaro and they'll leave absolutely embarrassed. But let me know what you think. Let me know your favourite short centre-backs, if you think they're good enough nowadays, if you think they're not. Do players need to be tall? Can they be small? And so on and so on. Let me know what you think of this video. If you could comment, subscribe and leave a like. But thanks for watching.